Welcome to the T2 Hubcast. Join Martin, Dave, Spencer and guests as they discuss all things personal and professional development. The T2 Hubcast, brought to you by the People Performance People.
So welcome back to the T2 Hubcast with me, Martin Johnson.
And me, Spencer Locker.
Spence,
Hey.
It's been some time.
You know what? I was thinking that just the other day. It seems ages since we've sat down together in the Hubcast room.
And if you stop gallivanting around the world, we might get more time to do more. So what I mean by that is we've just finished a sort of global roadshow with Dave and Spencer going around the world. We've been to Costa Rica, we've been to Kuala Lumpur, Poland, and now recently, your recent trip was India.
Yeah.
Pune in India.
Pune in India, what a place.
How did you find it, Spence?
Well, I just got on a plane and the bloke took me. No, to be honest with you, India's full of contradictions. You live in the. I was staying in a nice hotel, but it was in the middle of an area that wasn't so affluent.
So the rich and the poor are on each other's doorstep.
Yeah, but the thing is, they just get on with it.
Yeah,
and it's such a vibrant place. It really is. And I'm not just on about the horror of the traffic.
Yeah,
when I say horror, I mean bloody horror.
Well, Spencer sent me a video 2 days into his trip, and he's walking down a road in India, in Pune.
Yeah,
and there is cars, there are trucks, there are motorbikes, there are bicycles, and then there's a random cow, a sacred cow walking down the road, just amongst all of the traffic.
Yeah, and again, when you talk to the Indians about it, because it's unusual for you, but to them it's just that's what it is. It's mobile. It's mobile traffic calming.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was a cultural eye opener for you, was it?
Certainly, it was. They're so warm and friendly out there, very accepting. They can't do enough for you, but it's not as if it's not as if it's over and above, and it's sort of the going out of the way. It's just the way they live, so it's so relaxed, and it just is what it is.
And did you eat the local cuisine, or did you stick to burger and chips in the hotel every night? So
I ate the local cuisine in the hotel. There's as much as, and I don't want to sort of get tripped up by being polite or things like that, but I got advice from Indian people before I went out there.
Yeah.
And one of the things they said is don't eat street food.
Yeah.
If you're going to go out to a restaurant and you're eating in the restaurant, make sure you eat in an area where you can see the food being cooked.
Yeah.
And also stick to the veggies.
Yeah.
Rather than the meat.
Yeah.
So I sort of stuck with that, but then I just because I am a carnivore.
Yeah.
And I just started looking at feedback and recommendations for food places, but specifically for the hotel I was staying in, and everybody gave it glowing reports. And I thought, well, if you eat it and you get deli belly, they wouldn't put that.
Yeah.
So I decided
you stuck to the hotel,
but I was eating the Indian food,
brilliant.
And it's so different to the Indian food we get over here.
I bet it is. It's proper Indian food.
Yeah.
Cool. So you had a good trip, and as always, Spence, one of the things I task you with when you go on these jollies, well, they're not quite jollies, it's hard work, but when you go and work with organisations and leadership teams out in different regions of the world, one of the things I task you with is, can you come back with some insights from those regions? Does it differ? Is leadership universally leadership, or culturally, is there a real difference to the way leaders operate in organizations? Is it still down to the individual and not the collective? And I think what we've realized over this trip is there are differences, and because we do the psychometric testing as well, Spence, we see certain themes arising in certain regions. For example, when Dave went out to Poland, there were much more task goal focused motivations in those leaders. They were more directive. They would tend to be more strong in their communication style, in line with probably Brits. But going out to India, the first thing you said to me when you came back was the sense of collaboration and harmony and being amiable was just apparent in India. Would that be fair to say?
I think that would be fair to say. It may. I've got to put my hand up here and say it may be specifically because of the company that we're working with.
Yeah.
It may be specifically because of the guy I was working with, the guy who was organising it all and making sure that I had everything. The HR guy there was so proactive; it was unbelievable. The things he was putting in place, not just to get the job done, but to keep the people happy.
Yeah.
And he was so on the ball. He was ahead of the curve. I mean, I did tell you towards the end of it, they've actually, the company out there, or the branch out there, has collaborated with a local college to provide discounts for training and courses for their people, and they don't have to be work related. So when you start talking about personal development and people sort of moving forward, getting qualifications and this, that, and the other, basically the two things in India that stops people doing that is time and money.
Yeah.
I haven't got the time to do it. I haven't got the money to do it. Well, what they're doing is actually giving them the time and getting a discount from this company that they're working with. To be able to get them to learn things, and
That's
he's
great.
saying that these people may very well leave the company in the coming years, but when they go to another company, they can say, "I got this qualification from Smith and Nephew, by Smith." They made it happen.
Do you know, one of the things I found when I've worked with Indian folk is, there is a sense. There's a sense of collaboration. There's a real sense of positivity from a lot of Indian people, and I think. Do you think, let me ask you this question, do you think coming from the upbringing they've likely to have experienced, coming from where they still live today in the world and some of the challenges, like you said, you've got a 5-star hotel next door to a slum, it is literally that chalk and cheese still today. But coming from where they come from, for some a very humbling background.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a sense of gratitude, constant gratitude of Indian people, where everything's a positive thing and everything's a new day and a new opportunity? Do you think there's a culturally a sense of that?
I think there is. I think the big maybe because culturally and religiously, when you start talking about the Sikh and the Hindi religions, they are quite reflective religions. I think I haven't looked into them too much, but they are sort of. It is what it is, as long as your gratitude exceeds your expectations. But if you achieve, you do it off your own back.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, but if you don't achieve, well, actually, that's you as well.
Yeah, and you've got to. I always get the feeling that they've got to work hard for it. Nothing's given.
Oh yeah. So
definitely. so they take, like, sometimes, and it might be controversial or not, but we challenge it all the time. Sometimes in this country, I think one of the problems we've got generationally potentially is, in the Western world, our kids get everything from an early age.
Certainly, yeah.
They've got everything they ever want digitally, physically, from a facilities perspective, with luxury homes and and therefore, when you have that, it is inevitable that you're going to lose a sense of, I have to work for everything, because you never have had to.
No.
Whereas I think in countries still like India, you grow up with that philosophy of, if you want to achieve anything, if you want to get yourself out of it, if you want to do something useful with your life, you've got to bloody work hard for it.
Yeah. And I think to try and put that into perspective, because I did actually talk about this with the guy who was actually, I've got so much admiration for him. He's doing a great job out there. But I was talking to him and he said, let me put this into perspective. The actual geographical size of India is, I think it's 5 times smaller than the United States of America.
Really?
Yeah. But they've got 5 times the population.
Yeah.
So you've got somewhere that's smaller, that is more densely populated. And bearing in mind, when you look at the landmass of India, you've got I think you've got about 10 cities, 10 sort of reasonably sized cities. The rest of it's all rural. So when you're looking at education from a rural perspective, it's basics. You've got to be able to read and write, and you've got to be able to do your maths, to be able to move from the rural to the suburban.
Right.
And when you get in suburban, you get a low paid job. But then it's your responsibility then to improve your education to get a better job. Yeah. So it's moving. You've got these checkpoints, you've got these aim points, moving from rural to suburban, and then you're going from suburban up the ladder to getting decent jobs. So you can't take anything for granted when you're starting to look at every job out there, the amount of competition because of the sheer size of the population.
And a lot of Indian people I've met have immense drive, and I think that's probably where it comes from culturally as well.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So you brought something back with you that you instantly sort of spoke to me about.
Yeah.
You said, Martin, I've learnt this saying in India, and it absolutely correlates with a lot of our philosophies and beliefs and what we're trying to instill here in the Western world. And when you spoke to me about it, it was just apparent that over there it's more of a cultural thing rather than in isolation. It's what people do.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot we can take from it. So go on, share with us first. What was the terminology you came back with?
Right. So the word that I was told by, I'll give the guy his credit. It was a bloke called Saurabh.
Yeah.
And he is working miracles out there. But basically, he told me this thing called Jugara. Jugara. And basically, it means do what needs to be done with the resources that you have in the optimum time to the required standard to achieve the objective.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I said something to you at the start of this podcast, because I became interested, and then all of a sudden I saw something on social media recently, and it was a shorter quote than that, but it was from Theodore Roosevelt, and it was something very simple like, do what you can with what you have in the moment.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jugara is a slightly extended version of that, and a well-articulated version. But what you were sort of blown away with is that this isn't just one man's philosophy.
Yeah.
This is the Indian way. This is you. What do you say from the whether you're a
whether you're a guy, because the thing is, we see things on TV about India, and we see a guy or a girl. Well, hey, I'm no judgment here, but we see somebody driving through. Somebody will take a video of it, and it'll be a guy on a moped, and this moped will be loaded down with 8-10 bales of cotton or whatever products, and it just, to us, we sort of straight away we think to ourselves, oh, health and safety, or we talk about, oh, so something's going to happen here. But at the end of the day, this guy needs to get him and his products or his goods from point A to point B, and he's got a moped.
So he can feed his family.
Yeah, so he can feed his family.
That evening. Yeah. I mean, this is what we're talking about, right?
So this is it. From the guy who could sit outside a tin shack next to a road with all his products covered in dust. He's selling second-hand tyres or third-hand tyres or whatever. But the thing is, it's from that guy to the CEO of a multinational company. It is in their culture. It's not a conscious decision to start looking, because we compared it to challenge and threat state, didn't we?
So before we do that, just let me ask you a question. Let's break down what we mean. So Jugara, just read out the meaning again.
Right. So basically, it is do what needs to be done with the resources that you have in the optimum time to the required standard to achieve the objective.
So breaking that down then, that's more or less saying, and it sort of ties in nicely to when we talk about there's two types of people in the Western world. There are those who will blame a lack of resources for a lack of their success, which is ironic, really, because we have more resources than any other area of the world.
Yeah.
Maybe withstanding the Far East now, the up and coming giants of Japan and China, etc. But let's face it, in the Western world, we have more resources than most.
Yeah.
Yet we probably have more people who blame a lack of resources for a lack of their success.
Yeah.
And then we have those people who are incredibly resourceful. This ties into that notion of those who are resourceful, who do what they can with what they have to still drive the outcome in a timely fashion, will always thrive and prosper.
Yeah.
That's what it's sort of saying, isn't it, Spence?
So, I mean, to quote Gunny Highway, improvise, adapt and overcome. You've got to realise that this needs to be done, and nobody's going to do it for us, and nobody's coming to help. So for me to achieve this, to achieve my objective, I have to be resourceful. I have to utilise what's available to me to achieve the objective. And again, maybe it's not resources, maybe it's time. Because we talk about unconscious motivators, don't we? And you know what it's like with me. I come into the office on a morning and I know what my day looks like. Then you turn around to me and go, you see what you were going to do today, Spence? Forget that. You're going to do this. And I freak. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's an initial reaction from me, because I'm thinking, well, I don't have the time, and when am I going to do this, and when am I going to do that, and blah 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 blah, and I'll freak for a minute, possibly a minute and a half, and then I'll sort of align things in my head, going, well, actually, this takes priority. That stuff that was important to me in the big picture isn't really that important. So I'm getting to,
Well, do you know
I
what?
can get around that.
Let's do a bit of live coaching, right? Because some things just come to me with you.
Yeah.
I think you have a mindset of Jugala.
Right.
But I think so what I mean by that is, no matter what the challenges and the obstacles, you have a saying, and you say it to me all the time. And because I say, if we've run out of paper and we can't bind the training materials, or whatever it might be, if the transport and the trains are all cancelled, or whatever it might be, I always say something, and you say, "Don't worry, the job needs doing. The job will get done."
Yeah.
And you always say that. You
Yeah.
always say the job will get done. The job needed doing,
Yeah.
but the job needs doing.
Yeah.
So you've got that mindset. But what happens is, the run up to that, or the interim, you just send yourself crazy and get yourself in a shadow state and all triggered. And so you're sort of your Jugara, but it's still frustrating along the way.
I've got delayed Jugara.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But you'll always say, but the job needed doing.
Yeah, but the thing is, am I telling you that, or am I telling me that?
Yeah, probably. Who knows? But it works, right?
Yeah.
So going back to it, you've come back. I would think it would be safe to say, out of all the trips you've done, and all the places we've been with T2, you've come back from India probably more inspired than the other trips, and not that, and for the sole reason of what these people are capable of and doing, and the mindset they have around achieving things with such sometimes a lack of resource.
Yeah.
And it's almost humbling, and it's inspiring in the fact that if these people can achieve what they're achieving, what could we do with that right type of mindset, with a bit of Jugara?
Certainly.
And we did link it to Challenge State, because we spend our life saying to people, stop focusing on what you don't have.
Yeah.
Stop focusing on the consequence of what might happen. Right? And start focusing on what you can do and what you do control and what you want to achieve.
Yes.
And that's what a challenge state is, and not a threat state. And Jugala is a mentality where that happens. But to your point, in the Western world, we have to get ourselves into that mindset. It's like we have to talk ourselves into it. We have a wobble, and then we say, come on, let's crack on and let's do it. They habitually just follow that mantra.
It's their default setting.
It's a mantra.
It really is, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't have a wobble.
Yeah.
And to come on to a point you made earlier on, it is related. But yes, they have a certain way of doing things, and they have a will-do attitude. I think the lowest they go, it would be a can-do attitude. Yeah, I can do it. No, they will do it, and it's just a default setting. But having said that, when you start looking at the interconnectedness by people, we're still talking about people, and whether they are Indian, British, or from Malaysia, from Costa Rica, whatever, they are still people. So we still have these interactions that aren't always positive.
Yeah.
So when we start talking about unconscious motivators, so yes, they still have they encounter similar problems, and they encountered similar situations that leaders and managers do in this country, but they also have this Jugara.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is, so I'm doing one-to-ones with these people, and these people are saying, oh yeah, when this happens and that happens, and that triggers me and that triggers me. And it reassures me that they are still people. However, culturally, their cultural bias is, I'm going to do this. This will happen.
Yeah.
Things might get in the way. I might have a lack of resource. And this has just led me on to another thing. It is due to a lack of resources or a lack of time. But it is not an excuse of, well, they managed to do that without resources, so we can cut those resources out. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's they're doing great work. So can you imagine what we could do if we created X, or we gave them Y?
Yeah.
Absolutely, because that's important, isn't it? Otherwise, we're never going to evolve and make it. Just because people can get by and can be resourceful doesn't mean it should be the long-term thing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's maybe a message to in the Western world to organizations and leaders. Sometimes what happens in organizations is through a certain circumstance, they maybe lose a position or they make somebody redundant or whatever it might be. And when that space becomes free, they load on, some of the duties to other people in the department. And then after 3 to 4 months, because these people are working around the clock and overtime and becoming resourceful, they say, oh, well, actually, I could probably not backfill this role. I can save on the salary and cut costs. And just because we're managing okay, that's not a good form of leadership, right? That's only going to create more pressure, more stress, etc. So we've got to think about that. Just because people are being resourceful to drive outcomes doesn't mean to say it should be the long-term strategy. Does that make sense?
Very much so.
Because I think, it's all right, people being resourceful, and that's what we want. But we also want to support them as organizations the best we can to give them that time, right, to be able to deliver effectively without being overloaded or, because it's unsustainable sometimes, right?
That's the thing. And if you're a company or a leader who's thinking about the bottom line rather than your people and sort of saying, well, I'm going to be saving this and I'm going to be saving that because I've loaded these other people up on the job, because it's unsustainable, then when that falls over, when that situation collapses, then your bottom line is going to suffer. So yeah, you're getting a short-term gain, but it's not sustainable. And then you start. The thing is, when it falls over, you've got the temptation then to blame the person who's fallen over, when actually they're working over and above to make sure you get what you want, and they've just run out of road.
So let's come back to Jugara and some of the things you experienced on your Indian trip. One of the other things I noticed, Spence, when you returned back was we talked about gratitude earlier on. Gratitude's a big part of Indian culture. Yeah. And by far, it is probably the engagement that we've delivered where we've had the greatest amount of feedback, genuine feedback in terms of people posting on social media, people acknowledging what a wonderful opportunity it was for them to develop as a leader with us going over. Generally, how much they enjoyed the experience, what they took from it, and we were inundated with messages for a while. And is that a we do get feedback from a lot of stuff we do, and in general, we're very lucky at T2 because I believe we're good at what we do, but we generally get good feedback, which reinforces what we're doing is right, and it's enough to go again. But this one particularly felt really heartfelt and genuine and sincere, and just. Is that another reflection of the gratitude that they have for any opportunity which advances them forwards?
I do believe that's probably the case. I would align with that. But I also think that because, and I know I keep going back to Saurabh, he's a great guy. He's so inventive, outside the box thinking, and investing in his people. It's not necessarily focused just on the job, but it's because the people, all the other stuff. Getting these opportunities that other people don't get, then we got loads of good feedback, but at the end of the day, he facilitated it. He made that happen.
And that's important. We always say when leaders include themselves in the development process, when they don't exclude themselves and say, right, my team need training and feedback to me on how they've done. Yeah. When they actually say, no, we're going to go through this together and I'm going to be involved and I'm going to champion the purpose and why we're doing it and what we want to get out of it. And I'm going to open myself up to improve. That's where the magic happens. Yeah. And I wrote a post on LinkedIn just the other day about the 4 principles of what our customers do who receive more value from leadership development than the ones who don't. And the 4 principles was, the first one was top down. It's where the programs rolled from the top down, where the office of the CEO or the senior execs don't exempt themselves from going through the development themselves.
Yeah, casting a cultural shadow.
Absolutely. Number 2 was what I call doubling up. It's where the managers and the senior leaders who have been through it also go through it again with their direct reports. Yeah. That's essential for mutual understanding, right? We're in this together. And doubling up was the second one. The third one was around embedding. So how then after the program is delivered, what are they doing internally to own, champion and embed the learnings? And Saurabh's one of them people who not only championed it from the top down, but he sat through it with his entire team and facilitated it, or helped facilitate it. And without a doubt now, he's looking at ways with us via the hub and via some of his internal resources of how he can continue this living on with his people. And that's what a great leader does, right?
I agree totally. And it is, I mean, he doesn't harm it that he's quite a charismatic guy.
Yeah.
But he's just putting things in place like the weekend after, because I came back on the Friday. I set off back on the Friday.
Yeah.
He put together Olympics weekend where he got teams from the company to do these Olympics. When I say Olympics, it's a general term. So they play cricket. Cricket's big in India, if you didn't know.
Massive, yeah.
They had different events. They had this shuffleboard game that they do. Cram, I think they call it. Crama. I can't remember what they call it. But yeah, but they had, the way he constructed the teams was, you can't be in a team from your own department. So each team's got a captain, but you've got to go to a different team to be part of it. Yeah. So the idea being basically that, forget about the Olympics thing. During the working day, you can walk into any department and you know at least 2 people in there.
And you have a memory of them from the day you did the Olympics weekend.
Somebody looks up and smiles at you. Yeah. And that's for everybody. And I just thought, it's so simple, but it's so inspired.
And the fact that he's done that to finish off a week of development with you, it's like we've done some intense self-reflection and some development here. Let's go and have a bit of fun, but continue that collaboration and that understanding of each other.
Yeah.
And I think I certainly, although it was a tiring trip for you, with trains, planes, and automobiles to get to Pune in India, you came back with a little bit of a glow. You came back feeling a bit inspired, I felt.
Yeah, very much so. I'd agree with you there. I mean, it's been this last 6 months has been crazy for us, as I'm sure you'll agree. The opportunities we've had and the companies we've worked with, and the people I've actually met. So yes, I won't deny India was inspiring for me. It was vibrant. There was a buzz about the place, no matter where you went, whether it was 2 blokes carrying a broken fridge full of straw on the back of a moped, which was bizarre. Your random traffic stopping cow, people actually, I mean, this Jugara, I need to get over there, but this particular side of the road is blocked. So I'll go on the other side of the road. Yeah, it's
slightly dangerous.
That could happen. Yeah. But the thing is, that's the way they live, and that's how they get through things. But yeah, it's a vibrant place. It's a massively influential place. I can't wait to go back again. But it's not just India. It's the Pune. It's the Poland. It's the Kuala Lumpur. It's the Costa Rica. It's the working with companies here. It's traveling down south. It's all this stuff is just.
And that's why we're able to put the content together that we do, because we're bringing in insights from not just around the UK, but around the globe on what organizations are doing, what the best cultures seem to drive. There's more than one way to achieve it. It's not just one, right? But we're learning all the time that there are some universal principles of driving collective output. And so it's fascinating, Spence. And I'll just go back to you said about driving on the wrong side of the road and the cow wandering around the street. You also sent me a picture which just blew my mind, which obviously would never happen in the Western world, but it was a motorbike, like quite a long motorbike with an entire family sat on the motorbike. There was the dad driving with 2 kids either side of him and the mum on the back. No helmets. Right, middle of the busy roadway, and it was just like, that's an example of we haven't got a car, but my family needs to get to this end of the city. Get on the bike, right? And it's just an amazing cultural place, right?
It is.
Spence, we're more or less at the end of this hubcast. So just to wrap us up, I think there's something key there in what we've been discussing that supports all of our mindset stuff, all of our resources versus resourcefulness message, certainly the challenge state stuff, and it's Jugara.
Yeah.
And Jugara is, just read it out one last time.
Do what needs to be done with the resources that you have in the optimum time to the required standard to achieve the objective.
Just bloody get on with it.
Yeah.
Find a way and get on with it. Stop procrastinating. Stop blaming X, Y, and Z as to why I can't do things. What do we have right now?
Yeah.
What do we need to achieve? And how do I get there? And when you start asking them questions and start writing ideas down, things happen.
Yeah. Nobody's coming. I have to do this.
Exactly. Spencer Locker, loved that. Fascinating insight. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin.
We'll be back shortly with another T2 Hubcast.